old saying that we never notice small change. You know how it goes. I mean, like your kids. You don't notice them getting bigger because you see them every day if you're lucky. Of course, it takes you to see an old friend or a distant relative or something like that, and they say, "Oh, hasn't he grown?" Do you think, has he? Really? Oh, I guess he has. Don't notice because you see them every single day. This is a bit tenuous. I know. I'm going to get to the West Ham part in just a second. I'm not going to sit here talking about the fact that I've had to buy my son a new school uniform really quickly after buying him one before. Anyway, there's something happening in terms of small change at West Ham, and that small change actually becomes quite big. And it's the narrative of Dithering Dave. Now, I'm not talking about the substitutions. I'm not talking about all that stuff. But, and hear me out here, it's a suggestion. The reason we don't sign players is because Dave can't pull his finger out. It's indecisive, Dave. He can't make a decision in the transfer market. That's the narrative now. Now, I'm aware that the transfer window's not open yet. I absolutely know this. But you don't have to use this as an example. We sold Sebastian Haller. He told us that David Moyes, not Davids, too many Davids at West Ham. Look, we were going to sell Haller. The money was there. We're going to buy a replacement. That was 18 months ago. So you don't even need to just use this transfer window. I think it's okay to be suspicious, by the way, that we've not done that yet, and to worry that we haven't made any more investment in that area. But here's the small change. I think it's almost widely accepted now that it's Moyes' fault. Well, that's quite a big change. If you don't notice it incrementally over the last 18 months, that's quite a big change. And somehow the narrative has changed from the board being tight and the board being stingy, that's why we're not buying any players, to the reason we're not buying any players is because of David Moyes. And it's something I've been thinking about a little bit, because there is something getting peddled out there, and I'm conscious that I don't want to be party to it. I don't want to play into the hands of something that's being spun that's not necessarily true. Now, I don't know the answer. I don't know the reasons why we're either not signing players or we're getting signings wrong or they're taking too long. I don't know how much budget we've got, but I'm very conscious at Hammers Chat we sort of play into what may be perceived to be the problem, which is we've not signed any players. It's David Moyes' fault. That's the story. And I think we get a good cross-section on Hammers Chat because we've got a comment section you can look each day. And I think by and large, there are more comments now that it's Moyes' fault than the board's fault. Well, that's quite a shift. But as I say, the small change, we don't notice it. It's like that's gradually become the narrative. Now, yesterday on our Patreon channel, we had a Q&A with Kieran Maguire. Kieran Maguire, you'd know him, from Sky Sports and BBC. He's the football expert. He lectures at the I think it's Liverpool University. He does the Price of Football podcast. He is the preeminent authority on finances in football. He's your go-to guy. We did a Q&A for our patrons on Patreon yesterday, and during that I asked him a question about the ownership of West Ham, particularly about Kretinsky and about the selling date of 2023 when Gold and Sullivan are gonna sell up. If I'm clever enough, I'll edit a bit of it in here, and you'll see what I mean. You look at that, and you look at the new TV deal on the horizon. I actually think that quite possibly Kretinsky might have bought us to sell us as well.
Well, certainly this figure that's being quoted somewhere in the region of £600 million. People say, well, hold on, why are West Ham going for twice the figure of Newcastle? And again, it comes back to the stadium, because you are getting a great deal with regards to that. I appreciate that. I'm looking at some of the comments which are coming through.
What about Kretinsky? I look at his other investments. It's 40% of Sparta Prague. It's a little bit of Foot Locker. It's a bit of the Royal Mail. It's a bit of this. It's a bit of that. I'm not seeing massive commitment and investment. It just seems like an investor.
Yeah, that's really he's diversifying his portfolio. In terms of West Ham, if he decides to buy it off the existing owners, and I agree with you, 2023 is a logical time for them to sell because they get to keep all of the profits.
So when Kieran was speaking, I thought, well, hold on a second. Where's the incentive for the board to spend on here? Where is it? Because there really can't be one. And I know there'll be a lot of you will be probably screaming at your phone or your laptop, however you're watching this. Don't watch it any bigger than a laptop, for goodness sake. You'll probably be screaming saying, "We know this. We told you this." I know. I have always suspected that they were going to sell up. But I've never bought in to the rhetoric that the club was going to be, handed down to Jack Sullivan and David Sullivan Jr. and all the rest of it. I've never thought it. However, I do think it possibly suits a purpose if we're not going to sign any players, that the blame be shifted toward David Moyes. And I do wonder how much truth there is in that, because to think that David Moyes doesn't want to buy any players, let's just run with that a second. To believe that would be to believe that he wants to commit managerial suicide, because it really would be. Because if we didn't sign anyone, or we signed a load of crap players or cheap players, whilst I do think David Moyes can get the best out of an average bunch of players, he would sort of be... he'd be hanging himself, really, wouldn't he? I think this is David Moyes' last chance saloon in football. I really do. He's rebuilt his reputation. I'm not saying David Moyes doesn't get another job after this one. I think he absolutely would. But I don't think he gets another project after this one. We know, because of the way he's spoken, he has regrets that he left Everton too early. He has regrets that he didn't do things right at Manchester United. Obviously, then he went to Spain. He went to Sunderland. It didn't work out. He now finds himself at West Ham, a club with potential. Because of the stadium and because of the situation, because we're a London club, I discuss all of those things with Kieran Maguire, by the way, in the podcast. I'm not going to put that in here. Because of all that, we are a club with potential. He talks about the long-term project. I think if he fails at West Ham, then he doesn't get another long-term project. I think he'll always get jobs, but I think he gets firefighting jobs. He'll go back to the reputation of, David Moyes is the man that can within a season or two, take you from relegation up into, the safety of the top 8 or something like that. So I think he gets firefighting jobs. And make no mistake about it, he would put himself at massive risk if he didn't strengthen the squad. He really would. So you have to believe that's the case. I don't. You know, and I know that we need more players. You also, if you're going to buy into this narrative, have to assume that we know something that David Moyes doesn't know. David Moyes doesn't know that we need more players. David Moyes thinks going into the squad, going into the season with 18 players is fine. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. We also have to buy in to the theory that David Moyes doesn't provide the board with any targets at all. It's just not true. We know this. We know, he said, because Gio referred to it in his video the other day, we know that we were looking at Diaz, who went to Liverpool. We know that we were looking at Núñez. We know that we were looking at Rafinha. We knew that we were looking at Phillips. Before that, we knew that we were looking at Youssef En-Nesyri. It's not that David Moyes is not giving the board targets. It's the board are not able to get those deals over the line. Now, I'm not saying that David Moyes is innocent in all of this, okay? I'm really not. I think some of the transfer he's mucked up. All right, I think the Krau one he's mucked up, the Vlasic one he's mucked up. Do you know what? I'm almost bored of trying to work out who bought whose transfer it was. Be it Ben Rama, be it Krau, be it Vlasic. I don't care anymore. I just don't care. All right. But here's my point. That how has it become such that actually the focus has gone completely off the board? And if, just going back to that clip that I would have hopefully I've just played you, if I've managed to, a bit of a technophobe, I've managed to edit it and cut it and put it in there. Bearing in mind it's an acceptable thought process from the person who is an expert in football finances, that Golden Sullivan is selling up, and we don't actually know if Kretinsky is going to invest any money anyway. Does it not suit a purpose for the narrative and story to be that David Moyes is the reason we are not signing anyone? Because let's be fair, if it's out there that actually Golden Sullivan are selling in 2023, and actually it's more advantageous for them not to put any more money in. I'm talking about their money. Okay? I'm talking about their money. I'm not talking about the money the club generates. Because I do think that money should be available. There's no reason why that shouldn't be available. But doesn't it make it a lot more comfortable for the last year of their reign or whatever it might be? Doesn't it make it a lot more comfortable if the blame is not on them? And I just look at how much we've shifted from protests because of the way they've run the club, because of what they do, and a lack of investment as well, by the way, in the playing squad. Take away the Pellegrini thing, okay? I'm talking about a lack of investment in the playing squad, and then when you look at it now, that's gone. Now it's David Moyes' fault. It's the small change, but it's actually quite big. If you'd have gone away, basically, if you'd have gone away and lived on a desert island for 3 years, and you'd have come back thinking, oh, Golden Sullivan, but they still haven't got their wallet out and all the rest of it. You're, oh, no. You'd be forgiven for thinking, what the hell is going on here? Oh, David Moyes, he's to blame why we haven't signed any players. Oh, right, so Golden Sullivan and Krasinski have got their wallet out, have they? Well, we don't know. I mean, we don't actually know. So I'm a little bit reluctant to buy into this wholesale theory that it's all Moyes. As I've mentioned before, it may well be that it's a perfect storm in terms of a match made in hell. In terms of a dithering manager and a board that don't want to invest any money. I say any money, by the way, and I do want to make this point here. I don't think that would be the case because, again, if you take it to the other extreme, the argument, you have to believe that they would be happy to depreciate the value of an asset. Because whilst Krasinski might have a buyout option on the existing shares of Golden Sullivan, he's got the buyout option at a certain price. If West Ham plummet, he's not going to buy them at that price. Not only that, Golden Sullivan not going to be able to sell them at a good price either. For Golden Sullivan to sell up at a good price, the club has to be doing well. So actually it suits nobody for the club not to buy anyone. It suits nobody for the club to go into the next transfer window, start the next season, should I say, with no players or with 18 players. It suits nobody. It's no good for David Moyes. It's no good for the board either. For that reason, we're clearly going to sign players. Because I just think David Moyes would be barking mad if he thought, you know what, we were fine last season, we'll be fine this season with even less players. It's an absolute nonsense. And a lot of the stories are negative. A lot of the stories that we're reporting on are negative, right? He wants to sell Vlasic. Declan's not signing a new contract. He doesn't want to bring in another striker. Souček's leaving. He's had a row with the manager. There's more. Diop's off. And as I say, I understand we play into this, which is why I'm reluctant. I want to try and cut through it if we can and find the truth. We're never going to find the truth, which is why you've got to second guess it. Which is why I don't want to lean too much one way. Oh, that was a squeaking chair, wasn't? That was not that, obviously. I don't know. I do find it really, really odd. And people have been signing players. I mean, what was it? Tottenham announced Perisic. I'm trying to think of others. Other clubs have announced players or an intent to sign players. Gareth Bale. I wonder if we'd end up with Gareth Bale. No, don't be silly. But he's announced he's leaving Real Madrid. Whilst the transfer window isn't technically open yet, players have announced that they're leaving certain clubs and announced that they're signing for certain clubs. Ourselves, we've released players. I do hope that all of this, I will cast your mind back, and what I think would possibly be the most realistic view of what's happened. I will cast your mind back to when David Moyes came in for the second time. David Moyes said he wanted more control. David Moyes also said, or so we're led to believe, that he didn't want the boards to be as vocal as they were. Keep it to yourself. Shut up. Don't talk about transfers. No more leaks through your chosen, be it, whatever. All your chosen websites, your chosen newspapers, chosen journalists. Jack Sullivan stopped tweeting a long, long time ago. David Gold, he doesn't tweet unless he's getting the wrong player picture up on his birthday or whatever. You know what I mean? So by and large, they have kept quiet. Wouldn't it actually be the most sensible thing? And I'd like to credit the club with doing this, and I hope this is the case, that actually we're like a super slick machine. And all of this nonsense that's being put out there is just being put out to camouflage, to give it some smoke and mirrors behind the fact that we're actually actively signing players, we're negotiating, we're doing well. And collectively, there's an effort to put out misinformation. Put out lots of information. We're not signing him, we're signing him. We're doing this, we're doing that. So it's actually masks and clouds and covers what we're really doing, the players we're really going for. That's the sensible way to do it. That's the good way to do it. Hopefully we're doing that. I really hope we are. But I am a little bit reluctant, and I do think there is some dithering in David Moyes. I really do. But as I often say, things are not always black and white. There's probably a nuanced line in this, which is not that extreme and it's not that extreme. It's possibly something right down the middle. You've got to watch this one very closely.